Hey, all right, I'm here. My apologies, everybody. I'm sorry I'm late. Um, had a little technical glitch. Am I here? I hooked up okay? Hey, I had a I couldn't find my keys, and I thought I must have left them at my house. So I ran home and they weren't there. Turns out I always put my keys on the manual transmission of the Beetle. Well, apparently I had missed, and they were stuck up under my seat, and I couldn't get them out. So I had to almost flip the whole seat up to get the keys out so I could get in the door. So I'm here, and I apologize for being late. So, anyways, my apologies. All right. Shouts out to everybody. I appreciate you all being here. Did everybody know where I was? Did Susan let you guys know? I was having key problems. So, all right, very good. I am here, and we're gonna. I had a very frustrating 10 minutes before I got here, and now I'm here. So, all right. I hope nobody came and left because I wasn't here yet. So, all right, everybody. So, how we all doing? How's everybody doing tonight? Who do I got to shout out here tonight? Let's see here. Congratulations, Amy, on being the first comment tonight. And hey, Cheryl, Dave and Amy Jessen. Hi, Tina Bird. Teresa Bitters is in the house. Hi, Daryl. Angie Myers is here on a very windy day. You're absolutely right about that. Hey, Scott Moran. Hope you're feeling better, my friend. Sherry Louth is here. Jess Mack is also here. Hi, Jess. Hi, Jess Skinner. Hey, Kaya. Thanks, Suze, for putting that message out for me. Joe and Marcia Bowman. Man, 2 comments and 2 nights in a row. I am impressed. Tim McCandy in the house. Amy saw an eagle at work today. Good. All right. Bill and Crystal are here. Marge Tangeman. Hey, Bill Har. Hi, Nicole. Good luck on your job interview. Hey, Christina Colville. Yes, better late than never. You're right. And Janet Moran giving virtual hugs. Not quite as good as a real thing, but good enough. Amy, we miss you too, for sure. So, all right. Teresa lost her computer. Hi, Trina. Janet says, my boss says it's like the universe says relax. That may be true. Hi, Jess Skinner. And, all right. Hi, Cheryl. And, wow, it's Elizabeth's birthday. Happy birthday, Elizabeth. Very good. All right. Well, tonight we're going to read about somebody going insane. Sounds fun, right? And make sure my phone is off so it's not bothering me. All right, good. So tonight we're going to talk about somebody going insane, and I mean like off the rocker insane. The person that's going insane is your good friend and mine, Nebuchadnezzar. No, Joe, sorry, not me. I'm not going insane. I think I'm already there. But yeah, so that's where we are. I got to tell you, let me say a word about this. Before we talk about Nebuchadnezzar and what happens to him, I just want to share with you all. I was in a group telephone call. I don't know what the heck you call these things. With a bunch of people this morning from the district and the conference office. We were talking about when churches might open again. And Joe Sutton, if I find out you hide my keys again, buddy, we're gonna have problems. Because I'll tell you that right now. So, anyways, I was in a conversation with some of the district leadership on a conference call. Thank you. And there was a bunch of people there, a bunch of pastors from around the district and some district leadership talking about what to do about possibly reopening churches. And good grief, I don't know if we're ever going to open back up. Are Are people really that terrified of this virus? I mean, I'm not saying it's nothing. I certainly understand there are precautions that have to be taken, but I don't know. I, I don't know what the right thing is. I just feel like staying closed for who knows how much longer. I feel like I feel like at the end of the day, people need hope, and that's the business we're in. I mean, we are in the business of hope. And I think for us, again, and I'm not saying we open back up and forget everything and put kids in the nursery and have Sunday school class. I don't mean that. I'm not talking crazy. But man, I don't know. I feel bad because well, let me tell you, Teresa, based on the conversation I had this morning, Teresa and Kaya, uh, there's no hope in sight of anything. In fact, I'm not sure that there was even support for the parking lot services we're having out here. So I just look. I know we got to keep people safe, and I don't want anyone to die. I mean, I just want to be upfront about that. But I just think this terror that we're all living in is something out of an apocalyptic movie, and I just don't know if we're there. I just I'm afraid we've set a precedent now where every time there's a little something going around, uh, we're gonna get closed down again. I mean, every time the flu or a new cold or global warming, I mean, just pick your issue. And I'm just scared to death that because I mean, I'm even hearing people say it. Look at all the positive stuff with the environment because nobody's going anywhere or doing anything. So if we would just lock down for the next, I don't know, 100 years, the environment would be clean again. And then, look, I want the environment as clean as anybody, but I just really New Hope's going back next week. How about that? I just, I would never put a single one of you in harm's way. I would never want to do that, but I just think that the fear that I heard on that phone call this morning, I'm just worried that what we're all concerned about is getting sued. We're not actually trying to protect anybody because there was more talk about insurance companies and whether insurance companies will um, cover the liability of having services, and I was very discouraged, just to be honest with you. You all know me. I mean, pushing the envelope. I mean, that's my God-given gift is to be out on the edge instead of being reactionary. I like being proactive. And I just feel like we as the church need to do that instead of waiting until literally every other thing on planet Earth is opened up before the church. I just don't. I just don't believe that that's what we should be waiting for. We're going to continue to have parking lot services as long as I can talk the band into doing it. Which I mean, they were pretty excited about it. But we're going to continue doing that because I think that's important. And I know there were some people around town who are mad about that, but I just who gets to decide what's non-essential? I mean, who gets to decide that? I don't know that I don't know that I'm comfortable with the government dictating that to us, and I certainly am not comfortable with the government deciding that we're not. Um, I don't know. It's been bugging me all day. So, anyways, that's where I was this morning, and that's where my mind has kind of been. Um, I had somebody call me while I was driving in here tonight, and I had a conversation with somebody. Um, Man, there's still people hurting out there, and there's still people who are having trouble. I mean, I was talking somebody out of something pretty drastic, and I mean, those people matter too. And I just Again, I don't want to put anybody in harm's way. I'm not saying open up no matter what. I'm not advocating that. I'm not going home wearing a tinfoil hat or anything like that. But I'm just scared that we have set a precedent that we run from problems rather than face them. And I want to do everything. I mean, that's why I do these live streams every night. And that's why 5 minutes after it was ordered that we close the church, the Awaken band happened to be in the building when that happened. We immediately went to online service. I mean, it was like the first week. We didn't wait. And we had no idea what we were doing. And that first week was a little rough. But I feel like the message that we have and what we're called to do is too important for us to just sit on it. But you all know me. I'm a risk taker, and maybe that's not where everybody's at. But I don't know. A lot of decisions that need to be made. So, anyways, sorry to get off on that. I'm off to a great start here tonight. Let's look at Daniel, because Daniel also was living through a rough time, and some bad things were going on. And one of the people that was giving him a hard time was King Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar was a guy who goes from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are our most important people around, and we're going to make them leaders along with Daniel to throw them in the fiery furnace. Did anybody count how many guys we threw in there? Because I swore it was 3, and now it's 4. And then, I mean, he's just back and forth a lot. So he's a tad on the dramatic side and a tad on the unhinged side. And he has a lot to say about a lot of things. So let's find out what happens in Nebuchadnezzar. Because one of the things we're going to find is in a very interesting and almost very similar to the way that we read about Joseph, the capital G God that Joyce Canning was talking about a little bit ago. We read about that capital G God dealing with Joseph and Job too, probably, is very similar to the way that God also deals with Nebuchadnezzar, which is interesting because Nebuchadnezzar is the enemy. I mean, I haven't said a whole lot nice about Nebuchadnezzar up till now. And because he was participating in genocide, trying to wipe out a culture, trying to, take out people, trying to integrate the Israelite culture, make them Babylonian, just a lot of things that most of us would say, he's not the nicest guy around. But what we're going to find is God, capital G God, was even concerned about Nebuchadnezzar. And that's what we're going to read about tonight. And while we're going through this, you might get the impression that, are you sure about that, Pastor Tim? Yes, I am. And let me show you how this is going to work. Okay. All right. So this is Daniel chapter 4, the conversion of Nebuchadnezzar. King Nebuchadnezzar sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. So he basically sent a mass email out to everybody. And here's what it said. Peace and prosperity to you. I want you all to know about the miraculous signs and wonders the Most High God has performed for me. How great are his signs, how powerful his wonders. His kingdom will last forever, his rule through all generations. Okay? So King Nebuchadnezzar does something that might seem a little out of character here. The Most High God, that is God with a capital G, so it is the God. So he is identifying what God has done. The signs he's getting. And think about what Nebuchadnezzar has seen. He saw Daniel interpret the dream without even being told what the dream was. And he saw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego go into the fiery furnace, meet their friend in there that nobody could figure out how the fourth guy got there. And then they walked out, and if you remember yesterday, didn't even smell like smoke. All that put together, I think, makes a pretty compelling argument for the existing of this capital G God we've been talking about. So So I think that's a pretty good indication. So so he's really happy, and he's giving praise to God, which I mean we all like to see that. And he was doing great. So what Nebuchadnezzar is about to do is and actually this part, Daniel chapter 4, is going to be a little hard to place in the story, because what chapter 4 is basically Nebuchadnezzar's testimony, because it's sort of going to be like his memoirs, I guess. I'm not sure how to encapsulate that. Maybe we could talk about what that is as we go along, but basically he's going to recount for us a pretty incredible experience that he had. And it's going to be different from the first 3 chapters. The first 3 chapters are kind of told like a story, which it's fun to read, and I think we've had a pretty good time with it, and we kind of laughed along with it and learned from it. But this chapter is about Nebuchadnezzar saying, I want you guys to understand this. Nebuchadnezzar saying that. Not Daniel, not Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, King Nebuchadnezzar. So he sent out this proclamation to say, look at what God has done for me. So in our chapter 4, verse 3, how great are his signs, how powerful his wonders. His kingdom will last forever, his rule through all generations. I mean, that's pretty high praise. Verse 4, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was living in my palace in comfort and prosperity. I mean, we've seen that up till now. But one night I had a dream that frightened me. I saw visions that terrified me as I lay in my bed. So I issued an order calling the wise men of Babylon so they could tell me what my dream meant. Does this sound familiar? When all the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and fortune tellers came in, I told them the dream, but they could not tell me what it meant. That detail's a little different, because this time he did tell them the dream, but they couldn't interpret it. At last, Daniel came before me, and I told him the dream. His name was Belteshazzar, named after my God, with a little g. And the spirit of the holy gods is in him. I said to him, Belteshazzar, chief of magicians. Now remember, this is told from Nebuchadnezzar's perspective. Previously, everything was told from Daniel or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's perspective. So this is like the same story from another person's eyeballs. This is how the whole thing looked to Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, and that's why some of the details are different, because if you ever read eyewitness reports of anything, they never agree. I mean, there's always discrepancies. Verse 8. Hang on, no. Verse 9. I said to him, Belteshazzar, chief of magicians, I know the spirit of the holy gods is in you. Again, he's still using Babylonian language, the holy gods is in you, and no mystery is too great for you to solve. Now tell me what my dream means. While I lay on my bed, this is what I dreamed. I saw a large tree in the middle of the earth. The tree grew very tall and strong, reaching high into the heavens for all the world to see. It had fresh green leaves and loaded with fruit for all to eat. Wild animals lived in its shade, and the birds nestled in its branches, and the world was fed from this tree. Okay, my friends, this is obviously not the same dream, because the dream that we were talking about before was about a statue with a clay foundation. And we all pretty much decided unanimously that large structures built on clay is probably not the best idea. This dream is not about a statue. It's about a tree. So this is another dream. Now, the first one, you can understand why Daniel would have remembered the first dream. Why? Because that was Daniel's rise to fame. All right, and that was going to be a moment that stood out to Daniel, because that was the moment he got promoted and everything started. And then he remembers Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, what happened to them. Those are significant moments to Daniel. Now, when Nebuchadnezzar's telling the story, Nebuchadnezzar goes, no, the dream I remember was one I had later, the one about the tree. Now, Daniel's like, well, that wasn't a big deal. I'd already interpreted bunches of dreams by that point. So Daniel's like, this one, it was just another dream. But for whatever reason, this is the one that stuck out to Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, and so that's why we're interpreting two different dreams. Verse 12. It had fresh green leaves, and it was loaded with fruit for all to eat. Wild animals lived in its shade, and birds nestled in its branches. All the world was fed from this tree. It's a pretty big tree. Then as I lay there dreaming, I saw a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven. So an angel, basically. I mean, angel literally means messenger. So an angel came from heaven. The messenger shouted, "Cut down the tree, lop off its branches, shake off its leaves, and scatter its fruit. Chase the wild animals from its shade and the birds from its branches. Leave the stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze and surrounded by tender grass. I just lost my place. Now let him be I'm sorry, I lost my place. Verse 15. But leave the stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze, and surrounded by tender grass. Now let him be drenched with dew of heaven, and let him live with the wild animals among the plants of the field. Holy cow! Does it feel like I missed something there? Anybody have a Bible out? Did I not get that whole thing? It's a pretty abrupt change, isn't it? Does anybody have your Bible open? Tell me if that's what yours says in verse 15. But leave the stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze and surrounded by tender grass. Now let him be drenched in the dew of heaven. Is that how yours reads? I'm starting to wonder if maybe something got left out of the thing I printed off the internet. Anybody got your Bible open? Suze, I know you got your Bible open. Tell me what it says. Wow, that's quite a transition in one verse, isn't it? Does anybody wonder if we missed something here? Because I skimmed over that when I read it before. But boy, that's quite a transition. All right, so that's why I got confused. But leave the stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze and surrounded by tender grass. Now let him be drenched in the dew of heaven, and let him live with the wild animals among the plants of the field. That does sound pretty odd. So, for 7 periods of time, let him have the mind of a wild animal instead of the mind of a human. For this has been decreed by the messengers. It is commanded by the holy ones, so that everyone may know the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the earth. He gives them to anyone he chooses, even to the lowliest people. Okay, so it's interesting now. Okay, so in Nebuchadnezzar's memoirs, he's recounting this dream that he had about the tree and how great this was going to be, and he immediately transitions to what's about to happen to him. So obviously, you could see for Nebuchadnezzar what was important. It wasn't the dream so much, but it was the experience that he had, and he is going to have quite an experience. Okay, verse 18. Belteshazzar, that was the dream that I, Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now tell me what it means, for none of the wise men of my kingdom can do so. But you can tell me because the spirit of the holy gods is in you. Upon hearing this, Daniel, also known as Belteshazzar, was overcome for a time, frightened by the meaning of the dream. Now, when you hear the interpretation, you're going to understand why Daniel was like, I'm not so sure that I want to tell you what this was, because he knows it's not good news. Then the king said to him, Belteshazzar, don't be alarmed by the dream or what it means. Belteshazzar replied, I wish the events foreshadowed in this dream would happen to your enemies, my lord, not to you. The tree you saw that was growing very tall and strong reached high into the heavens for all the world to see, had fresh green leaves, and was loaded with fruit for all to eat. Wild animals lived in its shade, and birds nested in its branches. That tree, your majesty, is you. For you have grown strong and great. Your greatness reaches up to the heaven, and your rule to the ends of the earth. So the kingdom of Babylon had expanded greatly so, and we see that because they conquered the Israelites and many other cultures and nations, and who are doing genocide and take control of things and really hurting a lot of people. Verse 23. Then you saw a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven, saying, cut the tree down and destroy it, but leave the stump and the roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze and surrounded by tender grass. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven. Let him live with the animals of the field for 7 periods of time. This is what the dream means. And this, I know, Marge, I see your question there. I think this may clear up some of the questions we have. Listen to the interpretation. Verse 24. This is what the dream means, Your Majesty, and what the Most High has declared will happen to my Lord the King. You will be driven from human society, and what the Most High has declared will happen to my Lord the King. Oh, I've read that twice. You'll be driven from human society. You will live in the fields with the wild animals. You will eat grass like a cow, and you will be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. But the stump and roots of the tree that were left in the ground, this means that you will receive your kingdom back again when you have learned that heaven rules. Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar is going to lose his mind. Basically, he's going to go live out in the wild and now I can imagine Nebuchadnezzar was like, seriously? I mean, are you sure that's going to happen? I mean, because that's kind of out there a little bit, and we're going to see that this actually does happen to him. Now, remember, and this is important to keep in mind, this is Nebuchadnezzar's testimony. He's giving a testimony here. So he's recording this after the fact, and as we find out here in just a moment what actually happened to him, we're going to find out that it's pretty easy to see why this was a momentous experience in the life of Nebuchadnezzar. And verse 27, King Nebuchadnezzar, please accept my advice. Stop sinning and do what is right. Break from your wicked past and be merciful to the poor. Perhaps then you will continue to prosper. But all these things did happen to King Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? Daniel tried to tell him, dude, this is not, I mean, I know everything looks like it's going really peachy right now. And everything's working out and everybody's fat and happy and everything's good. But this dream is a warning that you're struggling more than you want to admit. And if you don't set yourself right and do these things like, care for the poor and what does he say? Give up sin, do what's right, break from your wicked past, meaning things like genocide and pulling young people out to make them become Babylonians when they're not Babylonians, and be merciful to the poor, stop oppressing people, stop making people slaves. Now, these are all things you probably ought to curtail a little bit. And Nebuchadnezzar was like, thanks, but no thanks. So look what happens. Again, from Nebuchadnezzar's own word, verse 29. 12 months later, so a year after, he had a year to correct this and did nothing. 12 months later, he was taking a walk on the flat roof of the royal palace in Babylon. I can imagine this was quite a sight. You're there in the palace, overlooking the city. The city was very wealthy because of everything they stole from everyone else. There was a lot that was awesome. And I'm sure walking out there that evening was really incredible to go see this and experience all this. And he was really impressed, as anybody would be. It was a beautiful city, I'm sure, built through dubious means, but a great city. Verse 30. As he looked out across the city, he said, look at this great city of Babylon. By my own mighty power. There's a phrase you never want to use. By my own mighty power, I have built this beautiful city as my royal residence to display my majestic splendor. All right, I'm going to throw this lesson in for free tonight. Never, ever, ever say anything like this, and never, ever think anything like this. This is what we call arrogance. Do you want to learn more about arrogance and how arrogance works versus confidence? Come to church on Sunday. That's what the sermon is going to be about. So I'm not giving it away here. But just understand that Nebuchadnezzar is being very, very arrogant here. Off the charts. Look at what I have done. I am amazing. And I am, geez, I am so perfect and I am so awesome. And these are famous last words, Scott. You got it. I mean, very famous last words. Everything is fantastic. Verse 31. Everything was going great till verse 31. While these words were still in his mouth, a voice called down from heaven, "O King Nebuchadnezzar, this message is for you. You are no longer ruler of this kingdom." You want to talk about a dramatic reversal? A very fast falling from your high horse, almost literally. Here you go. You are no longer ruler of this kingdom. You will be driven from human society. You will live in the fields with the wild animals, and you will eat grass like a cow. Again, does it sound familiar? I mean, it's exactly what Daniel told him. Verse 32, you will be driven from human society. You will live in the fields with the wild animals. You will eat grass like a cow. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way until you learn that the Most High, and if you're looking in your Bible, you'll notice capital letters here, capital M, capital H, Most High, until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. Again, almost a direct quote from what Daniel said earlier. You're right, Teresa. You want to talk about famous last words? Watch this. Also, very famous last words, and that's kind of where Nebuchadnezzar was. Okay, verse 33. That same hour. So I mean, we're talking a fall from grace that it was like a meteor falling to earth. That same hour, the judgment was fulfilled, and Nebuchadnezzar was driven from human society. He ate grass like a cow. He was drenched with dew of heaven. He lived this way until his hair was as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like bird claws. Anybody want to comment on that? He basically turns into an animal. He just goes crazy. Has a complete break, and if this quarantine doesn't end soon, I'm going to have hair like eagle's feathers too. But he completely loses it. I mean, the guy just breaks apart, and he's driven from human society, and I can imagine all of his. How long is 7 periods? My guess would be what we would call 7 years. I know it's quite a while. I have to go back and do some work on what the actual word for period was, because I know that a period of time could be a lot of different things. But so I'm not sure, but it was an extended period of time. One of the things that you also have to realize in the Bible, in books, especially books like Daniel and Revelation, numbers are always significant, always. And in the book of Revelation especially, but also somewhat in the second half of the book of Daniel, 7 is known as a complete number. Nothing is ever complete until it happens 7 times. That's kind of the rule. So a lot of times when you're reading some of these prophetic numbers, they'll talk about happen 3.5 times or 1,260 days. Well, if you do the math on that, 3.5 is half of 7, or 1,260 days is 3.5 years. So what that means is anytime something happens 3.5 times, it's a way of saying whatever's going on here ain't done yet. But things that happen 7 times, think in Revelation, you got the 7 seals, you got the 7 bowls. Nothing is complete until it happens 7 times. Same as here. 7 periods. Why? Because that's a complete experience. I don't know what other word to say. And you're right, Marge. This is not a pretty picture, no doubt about it. It's a way to show the whole country who has control. Yes, because you can imagine people were like, why is King Nebuchadnezzar eating grass? Does anybody know why he's crawling around on all fours and he has long hair and long fingernails and eating grass? Anybody know why that is? I mean, everybody had to see this. This is not something you can hide. And that would have been a very interesting thing to try to explain, is why that's going on. And so everybody got to see it. Everybody got to witness Nebuchadnezzar's fall from grace, and then not fall from grace, fall from power, I guess I should say. And would have made quite a thing. So okay, so he was out there for a long time. His hair grew long. His nails grew long. He ate grass. He was washed by the dew of heaven. He really went through a rough time. So okay. Verse 34. Now notice the pronouns. The pronouns we're talking about Nebuchadnezzar. When look in verse 34, you're going to find the pronouns change. Verse 34. After this time had passed, I, Nebuchadnezzar. So now we're back to Nebuchadnezzar speaking. I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven, and my sanity returned. And I praised and worshipped the Most High and honored the one who lives forever and ever. His rule is everlasting, and his kingdom is eternal. That's just a bit of a change of pace for what Nebuchadnezzar was saying before this experience. He got a real perspective on power, how power works, and where power comes from. And a lesson that you can be sure he never forgot. Verse 35, all the people of the earth, including all the people of the earth, are nothing compared to him. He does as he pleases among the angels of heaven and among the people of earth. This goes back to what we talked about with Job. And I told you back then, and some of us struggle with it. I struggle with it too, but God doesn't lose a lot of sleep over fairness. And that's kind of what Nebuchadnezzar is saying here. You know, God does what he wants, and he has no compunction to explain himself if he don't want to. I mean, he can, but he don't have to. But I think that Nebuchadnezzar understood why this happened, because Nebuchadnezzar realized he had made a mistake. Nebuchadnezzar is one of the very early examples of repentance. Nebuchadnezzar turned around, gave glory to God, and just got his life straightened back up. Okay, so no one could stop him or say to him, what do you mean by doing these things? Again, sounds very similar to what God said to Job at the end of the book of Job. Who are you to question me? Do you know where I store the snow? And do you know how I got the ocean to stay where it belongs? Anybody? I mean, surely you were there. I mean, this goes very much in line with what we hear God say in the book of Job about how we probably should not be questioning God, at least not directly. We can wonder, God could take it, but it's, there's God's still going to do what he thinks is best. And even if that's not what we would want. Spending 7 periods of time living as a wild animal out in the field, would anybody say, I think that would be a good experience? No, nobody's saying that. And so he's way outside the bounds. But God provided this for him for this reason. Verse 36. When my sanity returned to me, so did my honor and glory and kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored as head of my kingdom with even greater honor than before. Why? Because Nebuchadnezzar now understood why he's got it and how he's there. Now, you want to talk about a statement of faith? Here's a verse that we don't see in enough. You know how there's certain verses in the Bible that you always see on bumper stickers. Um, Philippians 4:14 about rejoicing always, or 4:4 about rejoicing always. And some of those others that we see all the times, a certain psalm like John 3:16 we see everywhere. I would put forth that Daniel 4:37 is one that we probably should see more often than we do. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and glorify and honor the King of heaven. All his acts are just and true, and he is able to humble the proud. That's coming from a guy who was insane. All right. That's coming from a guy who really had a lot of problems. He threw three guys into a fiery furnace because they didn't bow when the band played, and he contorted his face with rage when these guys wouldn't do what he was supposed to say. So this is a guy who, as Cheryl says here, got a whole new meaning to the come to Jesus moment. And yeah, he definitely had that, even in the Old Testament. So really kind of helped straighten this guy out. I mean, would anybody make the argument that living for 7 periods of time as a wild animal would be something that would help improve life? I don't know that anybody's going to make that argument. However, after it was all over, Nebuchadnezzar might make that argument. He might make that argument that, that time that I spent living out in the wild was the best thing that ever happened to me. So many times. And I think it was Joe Sutton was talking a couple of days ago about how he identifies with Nebuchadnezzar. Look, many of us do. Because we have gone through hardship like Nebuchadnezzar goes through. And instead of having that wreck our faith, it strengthened it. And I think that's amazing. That a guy like Nebuchadnezzar, who was completely unhinged, came to faith because he spent 7 periods of time living as a wild animal. I see this time and time again in the Bible, that God, how do I want to say this? God is always interested in helping people have an experience that will bring them closer to him. And he put the whole nation of Babylon on hold to draw Nebuchadnezzar close to him. Look, based on what I read here, I have every confidence that someday I'm going to go to heaven and I'm going to get to meet Nebuchadnezzar. I hope he's had a haircut and a fingernail file by that point. But I'm going to meet him in heaven. Why? Because Nebuchadnezzar spent 7 periods of time living as a wild animal. Changed his life. Changed the course of his life. Now, I hate to say this, but Nebuchadnezzar is going to bow out of Daniel's story. We're about to meet a new king. And who came, it says, if you look ahead to Daniel chapter 5, the first words are many years later. So this is the end. For as much trouble as Nebuchadnezzar gave everybody, it's not recorded that he gave anybody else any trouble. He's not the one who threw Daniel in the lion's den. He's not the same king. It's going to be another king who does that. So it's a very interesting dynamic. Clearly, this changed Nebuchadnezzar's life. And so many times, hardship, can drive people away from God. But I think that's because they're fighting it. I think that there is certainly something to be said for hardships bringing us closer to God. Okay, here's the words from a guy who was in the ER 2 days ago. Without trials, we never know real faith. Quoted by Scott Moran. Right there it is. I think that's well said because we don't know what that's going to be, and we don't know how that's going to work. And okay. All right, we're going to put a pin in it here, and we're gonna hold on to it till tomorrow. Has anyone here jump in the chat and answer this question for me? Has anybody here ever heard the phrase "read the writing on the wall"? Have you ever heard that phrase? If everything in your life was peaches and cream, why would you need faith? Well, I mean, faith would be, yeah, there would be nothing to have faith in the face of. You're right. You're right, Tina. And yes, we the difficult days we're in now, Teresa, we should allow that to inform our faith. All right, so you guys have all heard the phrase "read the writing on the wall." Did you know that that phrase came from the book of Daniel? Did you know that? That phrase came from this book. We're going to read it tomorrow night. That phrase literally comes from the story of Daniel, and we're going to read the origin of that in chapter 5. So, and that's where we're going to be reading tomorrow night. We're going to read about, not to get confused. The new king that comes to power is going to be Belshazzar, not to be confused with Belteshazzar, which is Daniel. So Belshazzar and Belteshazzar are not the same person. So, so don't get confused when we read that tomorrow night. But that's the origin of the phrase "read the writing on the wall" comes from Daniel. So, and we're going to be talking about that exact story tomorrow night. So, yep, that phrase absolutely comes from this book. So, all right, cool. So, all right, I got one more thing I want to bring up here tonight. First of all, I want to give a shout out to somebody that I know is here, and I know he's watching, but he's not. He doesn't comment in the chat. But I want to give a shout out to my good friend Scott Lynch. That guy, he keeps me on task. He texts me every day to remind me to send out the link. He makes sure I never forget, and he's my man. So I appreciate him keeping me on task. To make sure I get the link set out. I hear from him every day, sometimes as early as 8:30 in the morning, to remind me to send the link out. And I know he's listening. Scott, buddy, I appreciate you. Thank you for being a faithful participant here, and I know you're enjoying these stories that we're doing, and I just want you to know I'm so glad that you're here. So thank you, Scott Lynch, and for keeping me honest. So yeah. So thank you, Cheryl. I always need your prayers. I'm not overly frustrated about the situation. I'm concerned. I'm concerned that we're gonna that fear is making so many decisions right now, and I don't know that fear should be making decisions. Look, I'm all for protecting people. I'm all for social distancing, and I'm all for precautions and all that stuff. But I just don't know that slamming the door shut on all the stuff. I don't know that I'm convinced of that. So, but we're going to do everything we can to keep everybody safe. Just keep praying because we may be protecting people from a virus, but there's a lot more problems in the world than viruses, and they're just as deadly. So just keep that in mind. And Cheryl, I know you know that as well as anybody. Can he help you find your keys? I got him. They were stuck under the seat of my car around this, and I had to take almost the whole seat out to get the keys out. So apparently when I tried to throw them, I had manual transmission in the Beetle, and when I went to throw them on there, I apparently missed the stick, and they went under my seat and got stuck. And so I was out in the parking lot having my own come to Jesus moment, trying to get my keys out so I could get in here. So yeah. So thank you, Tina. Thank you, Scott. Don't get distorted with the anger face. Right? No, nobody wants that. So, and thank you, Trina. We're gonna pray about what needs to happen and keep praying, and we're gonna keep the faith march. Thank you. Just keep praying for this because I want to do the right thing. I don't know that the right thing is abundantly clear right now, but I am dedicated to doing everything in my power to try to keep Jesus front and center while all this is going on. So, whatever it takes. So, thank you, Beth. Tim Dickey, you speak the truth, my brother, and I could not possibly agree with you more. And that's the part that concerns me is we will go to this extreme to save ourselves, but there's still people dying out there. So, thank you, Joyce. It's always a party when you show up, so I appreciate you being here. So, all right. Does anybody else got anything for the good of the order? Please keep in mind we will be having the first light on Sunday. Obviously, we'll be back here tomorrow night, but first light on Sunday will be first light on Sunday will be on Facebook or on YouTube as usual. I just submitted the stuff to Kurt Eversman earlier today, so he's going to be working on that, and that should be uploaded and ready for you to set reminders on. Hopefully, as early as tomorrow. And then we're planning, the good Lord willing and Mother Nature cooperating, we're planning a parking lot service in our south parking lot on Sunday morning, just like last week. We do have some tweaks that we want to look into. And so, as far as parking and some things, but I tell you, that service for having no idea what we were doing, I mean, literally came off without a hitch. And I give all glory to God for that because that was amazing. So, looking forward to having you here. We do have rules. Just asking. I have to keep telling you to stay in your cars because I don't want to give people a reason to complain about us. But it was certainly wonderful to be together, and I got a lot of love out of Sunday. People just appreciating what happened. So thank you, Teresa. And Suze, yes, thanks, Joyce. And Audra, glad you're going to be here. Look forward to having you. So, all right, everybody. And I apologize for my lateness. I will try to be more responsible tomorrow and be here when I'm supposed to be and not have my keys stuck under the seat in the Beetle. So, you guys honor me with your presence here. I mean that. I mean that as sincerely as I can say it. Thank you for sharing your evening with me. I appreciate it. Thanks, Joe. And that's right. Everybody have a good rest of your night. I love you all very, very much. I'm glad to have you here. Thanks for walking through Daniel and reading about crazy people. And you all know what you need to go do now. Go wash your hands.